The freedom comes when we become willing to let go, and when we become willing to trust ourselves and where we are being led. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back to another episode. I am your host, and as always, I am super excited to be here with you for another episode of the podcast. Today, I wanted to talk about this idea of letting go of expectations. But before I get into it, I just want to continue to thank you all who come back week after week for these podcasts. And for those of you who share the podcast with others and who leave reviews, thank you so much. It really means the world to me. And it helps the algorithm of the podcast serve up our podcast to more of these people who are interested in learning about our communication, our brain, and why we do the things we do, as well as learning some new tools and skills and mindsets to move past the barriers that we have in life. And so I just want to start by thanking you. If you're new to the podcast, please don't forget to subscribe now so that you do not miss an episode. And we appreciate you sharing this podcast with others, friends, family members, colleagues, your community, so that, again, we continue to impact more and more people. With that, I want to get into it. Why in the world would I be talking about letting go of expectations? Well, as you know, if you've listened to past podcasts, this year I had the opportunity to travel to Japan for 9 days with my son. And Japan was one of those things that, I didn't think that I would be able to travel so far to explore. And so it was kind of on my bucket list. And when we have things like that are on our bucket list, things like trips or things that we want to do in life, we often have a picture in our mind, an expectation of how that thing is supposed to go. And one thing I'll share with you, and I have shared in previous podcasts, is that while there were some things that did go as planned, there were a lot of things that didn't. There were a lot of detours that we had to take. There were a lot of changes that happened inside of that trip. And there was a lot of times where I felt out of control and lost. And at the beginning of the trip, as things began to detour away from where I initially thought they were going to go, and as I noticed that the interactions and the things that I thought I would experience those first few days weren't happening, I began to feel that disappointment. I began to feel that sort of let down feeling. And then I realized that I was in the space of expectation. And one thing that I have learned is that expectation is a setup. It is a setup for resentment. It's a setup for disappointment. It's a setup for a host of negative emotions that I can't even name all of on this podcast. We don't have enough time. And one thing that I also have learned is how when we let go of expectation, we can experience freedom. Now, I know that sounds really weird. Like, what are you talking about? How do you experience freedom when you let go of expectation and allow yourself to flow? Well, I'll tell you how it happened in Japan, and then we'll talk about what does this look like in our lives. Well, I think I might have shared a bit about a story about, how many times that we got lost on the train. And so one of the many times that I was lost on the train, I was very anxious because even though I knew where we were going and we were somewhat on a timeline to get to where we needed to go, I was also concerned and worried about the people I was traveling with. So it was my friend and my son. And so it had me hold on to this expectation of getting where we needed to go. Now, the tension that was arising in me, I have talked about this a little bit, where there's this phenomenon called limbic resonance. And that is the unconscious connection sort of like an energetic connection, if you will, the unconscious connection that our brains have to each other. And so what happens is when we experience certain emotions, the micro expressions on our face, the micro body movements that we give off or we emit actually get picked up by the brains of other people. And so what happens is that my tension becomes like spills over and becomes tension for the people I'm traveling with. And so I'm holding on to these expectations. I'm feeling this tension rising, and then I'm seeing the tension in the people that I'm with. And in this moment, I recognize this is not going well because I am holding on to an expectation, and that is confining me, confining the way that I'm experiencing this trip. And so for, one of the many times that we had to detour, we detoured. We detoured and we took different trains, and I relaxed and acknowledged that we were off track and made some calls to the place that we were supposed to get to. And they were very gracious in saying, okay, we understand. When you get there, we will still work you into the tour. And at the end of the day, when I relax, when I let go of that confined experience, it allowed for my travel partners to also begin to experience a freedom and expansion of breath, if you will. And it allowed us to let in laughter. And as we let go of this expectation, of this tunnel vision about where we were going, we could actually experience the people around us. We could actually interact with the people around us. We could see the things that we couldn't see before, stop at stores here and see the terrain on the train. And it actually ended up being quite nice of an experience. We connected with other travelers that were on the train and got some travel tips of where we might look to explore in the future, or if we had time, other things that we could do. And so letting go of that expectation and allowing ourselves to flow inside of the detour that we were taking actually allowed us more fun and more freedom. And so, again, I come back to why in the world would I be telling you about this inside of my trip to Japan? Because how many things in life are we tunnel visioned around? How many things in life are we so set on our path that any detour causes an upheaval in our emotional state? And if you've ever experienced being in that state and actually transforming it in the moment, you can even feel the freedom that happens in your body. And so, what we need to be able to do in order to let go, because people say, well, how do you do that? How do you let go of the expectation? How do you let go of the tunnel vision? And that is, we must trust ourselves. We must trust ourselves to be able to be flexible and navigate the circumstances at hand. We must trust ourselves to be able to know that we can handle whatever comes our way. And we must trust ourselves to know that we can experience the detour and find our way back to the path that leads us to the ultimate destination. And we can also be aware and be open to that maybe the destination that we were going to isn't the one that we're supposed to be. It isn't the, it's, it may be part of the destination, but it is not a part of the whole of where we're supposed to be. And so understanding these things, recognizing and being willing to experience a little bit of discomfort at first in that letting go, and then sit back and breathe and look at, well, what are all the possibilities? When we're able to do that, we can see them. We can see the other possible paths, and we can allow ourselves to enjoy the other possible paths. I think a lot of times in society, especially in a lot of industries, unless you're an artist or a musician where there are lots of detours and lots of paths and lots of possibilities. I think like in the traditional educational model, we are given this context of a linear path. I know as a pre-med student, as a person who pursued medicine, it was you go to college, you major in biology or chemistry, and then you go to medical school and you become a clinician or an academician or a researcher, and you work in a hospital or a clinic, and then you live out the rest of your days, right? I was not given this context for all of the things, all of the skills that I could learn along the way, all of the pathways that I could take with my knowledge. And fortunately, I had a mom who took detours. She modeled detours for me. And in her modeling and in her teaching to me, I was able to know that what was possible for me was really anything that I could create. And so I was fortunate that I was constantly stepping off the path well trodden and always stepping on these little tributary pathways and maybe forging some of my own. And believe me, along that way, I still found my way on the traditional path most of the time until I didn't. I still found my way walking the main path, but then I'd go off on a detour and be like, what is that over there? Or I'd go off on a detoured path and meet the main path coming back in. But eventually, what I recognized is that that main path, that wasn't the path that I was supposed to be on. I actually found a new main path. And that's what can happen when we allow ourselves to let go of not only our own expectations, because oftentimes, listen now, oftentimes the expectations that we have are actually not our own. They are the expectations that others have had for us, that we have inherited from our parents, from our teachers, from our family members, especially if we are first generation, if we are the first two. If we are the first two, if we are first generation, and let's be clear, I actually am not first generation, but I have a lot of first generation friends and colleagues. And I've coached a lot of first generation physicians, clinicians, and executives. And I've taught and facilitated amongst a lot of first generation. So I am not first generation. That is not my story. And I am very aware of the plight of first generation. And so the expectations that can come when we are walking the expectations of those who are looking upon us to be the success, to break the pattern, to shift the trajectory, it can actually be, in a way, oppressive. And so we have to be willing to explore beyond those boundaries and be courageous in saying, you know what? I know this is what has been expected of me, but what my heart's desire is, what my passion is, what my purpose is, may be different. Let me explore. Let me explore all of the possibilities. And that doesn't mean that we cannot walk the main path while we explore the possibilities, because that's exactly what I did. I walked the main path while I explored the possibilities until I no longer had to do that. And so the freedom comes when we become willing, to let go, and when we become willing to trust ourselves, and where we are being led by God, by the universe, by whatever entity that resonates with you on this journey. When we become willing to be led, trust ourselves, trust the universe, higher power, trust those who we know are trustworthy to show us who we are beyond who we think we are, to kind of remind us of who we are beyond who we think we are, and walk that path and take the detour. And so that is really what I wanted to bring today. It's just looking at where the expectations that we have for ourselves, for the path that we are moving on, where they are not aligned with our heart's desires, with what we feel our purpose is, and beginning to move into that space of self trust and trusting those mentors around us who we know have our best interest at heart, and being courageous, trusting in our own courage and our own resilience to be able to walk the path that we want to walk, even if it's the path less traveled. All right. So as you move through the week, reflect on that. Are you walking your path? Because you may absolutely be, right? Are you exploring while you walk that path? Just in case there's a calling, there's a knock. And what do you need to do? Who do you need to ask for support from in order to, if you find that you're not, in order to borrow the courage and the faith to be able to step on that path? This is a lot of the work that I do individually with my clients in leadership. And these are a lot of the spaces that I facilitate as well. And so if this is something that you're grappling with, then please reach out, not continue to walk that path alone. And share this episode, like I said earlier, with a friend, with a colleague, with a family member, because you may know someone who's struggling with their expectations, and you don't know who you don't know is also struggling with their own expectations. All right. And again, thank you for continuing to listen. I am looking forward to what we're going to be bringing in the new year in 2026. And so continue to listen and continue to share, leave your comment, leave your review. And until the next time we see you, continue to let go, continue to find flow in the detours, and stay empowered. We'll see you on the next episode.